Good evening, it is 7:30. This meeting will come to order. Would you all please rise and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Tanya, would you take the roll call, please?
Mayor Baker?
Here.
Councilmembers Fox?
Here.
Harmon? Here. Nagel?
Here.
Riddle? Here. C?
Here.
Wimple?
Here. Okay, we do indeed have a quorum present. And before we can proceed, we need to approve this evening's agenda.
So move.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Member Harmon, a second by Member Fox, and that is to approve this evening's agenda. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, those in favor of the motion, yes?
Yes.
Those opposed, no. We have an agenda. This time, I'd like to welcome each and every one of you here this evening. As always, council appreciates your attendance, and as always, if there's anyone in the audience that would like to address council, you will have two opportunities to do so. The first being for items that are on the agenda, which is item number 6. The second for being for items that are not on this evening's agenda, which is item number 11. Before we get to the public comment regarding items on the agenda, I have a proclamation that I would like to share with you all. Whereas in 1983, President Ronald Reagan signed a bill creating a federal holiday to honor Martin Luther King Jr. And whereas the city of Tecumseh desires to recognize Martin Luther King Day, and whereas Martin Luther King epitomized altruism, and whereas his nonviolent tactics, leadership, and spirit brought awareness to injustice, fueling the courage and perseverance to make social and political change in communities across the country. And whereas Martin Luther King Jr. has taught us that true compassion is not a simple act, but rather dissecting the root of injustice and rebuilding the path. And whereas I Have a Dream has gained momentum since King's death in 1968, but where momentum is still to be had, to truly be a nation where all men are created equal and where there is liberty and justice for all. And whereas the city of Tecumseh honors King as a man of faith, intellect, and integrity. And whereas the city of Tecumseh wishes to endorse the beliefs of this great leader and advocate a community of brotherhood. Now therefore, the City Council of the City of Tecumseh respectfully concludes this proclamation to Martin Luther King Jr. with his words: "The ultimate measure of a man is not where he stands in moments of comfort and convenience, but where he stands at times of challenge and controversy." This is signed by me, Jackson L. Baker, Mayor of the City of Tecumseh, dated January 21st, 2019. We are at item 6, public comment, items on the agenda. If there's anyone in the audience who would like to address council regarding any item that is on the agenda, this is your opportunity. When you rise to address council, please give me your name and address for the benefit of the clerk. Mr. Swift.
Bill Swift, 1401 Fox Run, Tecumseh. I want to just say how much I appreciate you making the proclamation. I think it's fitting, and you did a great job. I really do appreciate it.
Your words mean a great deal to me. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Anyone else?
Brian Erdott, 504 Red Maple Drive, Tecumseh. I want to take a little bit of your time to discuss one of the items that you guys have on the agenda, which is the bathrooms at the pit. I dug through some of my papers I haven't thrown out yet, and it just so happened this year for the Tecumseh Herald, there was a lot of articles in there regarding the pit. This one here shows a bunch of people laying out on the beach. Actually, off to the left, it talks about the contract being awarded to Krieghoff for $51,500 to construct it. The next one here shows a 42-foot double T reinforced concrete beam weighing 14,000 pounds being lifted into that building. The next one shows a bunch of women and children at the dedication of the park. The final one here shows the report from the Parks and Rec that says that last month, 11,572 swam at the newly dedicated park. I sent a letter via email to the City Council, Dan and Shelley. I'm not sure if you guys all received it, so I'd like to read it real quick to make sure that you're aware of it. Dear City Council, how familiar are you with the building at the pit? I see that this is on the agenda for Monday. I had voiced my concerns to Shelley Lynn, Dan Swallow, and Jack Baker when this came up over a year ago. They have all had an open ear to my concerns with tearing down a very sound building to construct bathrooms. My understanding is the bathrooms originally were shut down due to vandalism and maintenance issues. The potential for vandalism will continue to exist with the new bathrooms. The new bathrooms have been described as being vandal-proof. I have yet to see anything that's vandal-proof. The maintenance issues appear to me to be a lack of maintenance. A lack of maintenance on a city-owned building is absolutely unacceptable. A lack of maintenance on any building is a result of poor allocation of funds. In this case, it is a city-owned building, which is a result of poor allocation of tax dollars. City-owned buildings are the responsibility of department heads, the city manager, and city council to oversee and have the citizens' best interest in mind. I understand that this situation was inherited by the current department head. I respectfully disagree with the solution that's been presented to tear down a structurally sound building due to the lack of maintenance inside. My understanding there was many donors when this originally was built only 50 years ago. This made the Tecumseh Herald's 50 years ago page not too long ago. I'm very disappointed in the fact that the city has not been fiscally responsible with tax dollars to maintain a building for more than 50 years. Actually, it was less than 50 years that this building has been maintained, as it has been closed for the majority of the past 10. If I was a donor for this project, I'd be very disappointed in this fact. I would also be less likely to donate any future donation. I'd be less likely to donate to any future donation requests if I saw that this donation was tore down in under 50 years. This building could be used for indoor rentals with a large overhead door on the south side for birthday parties in the early spring or late fall to get out of the weather, or even in the summer to get out of the sun. I expressed these concerns without knowing the actual cost for rehabbing the building. I looked for this information on the Park and Rec Advisory Board minutes and could only find the need for something to be done with the building in the April 11, 2013 minutes, and in the January 11, 2018 minutes state that the grant was approved. Were these costs given as a complete remodel or bathrooms only? While knowing the total cost would be for the complete remodel is important, I would then ask if it would be possible to only do the bathrooms at this time. If the proposed plans move forward, we would only end up with bathrooms anyways. So why not only repair the bathrooms now? Then money could be put aside to complete the remaining parts of the building. I have to believe that this could be done with the $119,000 that will be consumed in tearing down a solid constructed 3,000 square foot building with limestone exterior, with great potential to only be left with bathrooms. If this can't be broken down, why not set aside a line item for it to be completed all at once in the future? It has been non-functional for some time. What's another few years? I've been a part of many remodels, both residential and commercial. I've never witnessed a building that is as structurally sound be torn down due to the lack of funds. My customers would normally hold off until they can complete the job the way it should be done. The city pushes for the private sector to remodel downtown buildings, which is costly. How would the city handle the private sector coming in and tearing down old buildings downtown instead of remodeling them? I understand that the design standards that the city has would prevent something that doesn't match from going in. However, I think this is a great opportunity for the city to lead by example and maintain the history of that park. In closing, I ask you to look at this as if this building was on your property. Maybe you just purchased this property and the previous owners neglected it. Would you settle for tearing down a building that is structurally in great shape to build a shed? Or would you save your money to make the repairs the correct way? Respectfully, myself. Not knowing what those final numbers are, concrete, I did some digging in my notes because I was a part of, with Krieghoff, putting a number together for that. And we did have to submit the numbers a couple different ways. There were some different options that were looked at. Near as I could come up with, and I don't know how accurate this is, so if it can be corrected, I'd love to know what those true numbers are. But the one way was to divide this up into 2 phases. Phase 1 being only the bathrooms. What I could come up with was that was gonna have 4 toilets and 2 sinks on the women's side, and 2 toilets and 2 urinals and 2 sinks on the men's. And that cost was $130,000. $11,000 more than tearing down that building and putting up only 1 bathroom, 1 men and 1 women's bathroom. And that building's large. It could be used for, as it was years ago when all those kids were down there doing that. When I expressed concerns to the people I mentioned that I gave concern to, I asked for that to get explored, to look at the lifeguards, using high school kids as lifeguards. I touched base with the person in charge there, and in the past year, they haven't been contacted on that. I really think that we're missing the boat on opening up the park, maybe not 7 days a week, maybe 3 days a week, and charging to go in there. Parks and Rec used to rent canoes at the old building and down the road. They gave that up for whatever reason I'm unaware of, and now there's a company down there for the past 2 or 3 years that's doing really well. It's hard to get a kayak rented down there because all the ones they have are rented. I think there's a lot of communities that would give a lot to have a facility with that pond on it, and I feel that we're definitely underutilizing it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Beretta. Is there anyone else who would like to address council? Once again, items that are on the agenda. Okay. Hearing no further remarks, let's go on to the report of the city manager. Dan, please.
Thank you, Mayor and Council, and thank you for having me back in short notice here. I was in South Carolina this morning, so, but I think I'm reasonably well organized enough here. Just a few things to report out this evening. First of all, just to highlight a few things at the Parks and Rec Department that they've been working on. We have a lacrosse camp for 2nd to 8th graders, which is beginning in February. Obviously, this is a growing sport, so we're trying to capture that and capture that interest in the community. We have several partners in making sure that those courses are available for all ages. So they also have a younger group, K to 2, that they can start out and learn lacrosse. So great activities there. Encourage if you know anybody who might be interested in the sport of lacrosse. I actually just came from seeing my daughter play lacrosse in South Carolina. So it is a great opportunity here, and encourage people to take a look at that. So we also want to thank the Elizabeth Ruthruff Wilson Foundation for once again sponsoring our summer concerts in the park series. So there is a $1,500 donation from them, and that makes that possible for the concerts in the park right here at right next door at City Hall here. So thankfully we'll be able to do that again with their generous sponsorship. The Department of Public Works. Obviously with the snowfall, we sent out early notice and just again remind people when there are snow events to try and park off the street. It makes that snow clearing much more efficient. In the event we do have to declare a snow emergency, those vehicles that remain on the street could be ticketed, but obviously we try and avoid that and ask for voluntary compliance with that. Other things that, in addition to plowing streets, DPW, you notice probably around town quite a bit doing tree work throughout the winter. So for trees that they've been identified that are dead, if owners are wondering why it wasn't removed at that point in time, we often do that work during the winter months when we're not engaged in snow plowing or salting of the streets. So that work is being done, as well as low limbing, so limbs that may hang low down in the right of way. But appreciate drivers to give that extra room to those workers, give them a little extra space so they can complete that work safely. In the clerk's department, they're working on a number of things. They've just completed the election audit with the State Bureau of Election, and we should see a final report on that shortly, but overall, and the clerk can attest to this, things going very well. We appreciate the state coming in and helping us make sure that all of our elections are going smoothly. We are also looking at our charter does find a couple more items that differ slightly with state election laws. We're bringing those back to you here shortly to make sure that we annotate that properly so that anybody who picks up our city charter, either the hard copy or online, they can see those notes on there and what is different from state election law to make sure there aren't any discrepancies in the future. So taking a look at that and bringing that back to you. Also, continuing our efforts on record retention work and making sure we're keeping those records we need to, but also not just keeping paper for the sake of keeping paper. So clerk has been great on clearing out some of that extra backlog of work and making sure also each of the departments understand what records they do need to retain and for how long. So we thank the clerk's office for that. Over at the Tecumseh Center for the Arts, a number of things going on. If you missed it, we had a troll take over, so all the young ladies and a few young gentlemen were able to dress up as trolls and had a great time at the TCA. This is in lieu of our typical Princess Day, so a different spin on that, but that event went very well. We also have another event this coming weekend. TCA presents Lawn Disordered Comedy Show. This is a family-friendly comedy show, so if you're looking for something to do on that Saturday evening, encourage you to go out and see that. The Tecumseh Youth Theater continues to present Ronald Dahl's James and the Giant Peach. So great, we'll preview that. They came to actually one of our Kiwanis meetings. So great efforts by the Tecumseh Youth Theater. Certainly encourage folks to see that. And a number of other school as well as Kiwanis has their ongoing travel and adventure series. So I encourage you to, again, share that with your friends, neighbors, and promote the TCA when you can. So with that, that concludes my report this evening, unless there are questions from council.
Thank you, Dan. Any questions or comments regarding the report of the city manager? Move to accept. We have a motion by member Whipple and a second by member Nagel. And that is to receive and place on file the report of the city manager. Is there any discussion? Okay, hearing none, those in favor of the motion, yes?
Yes.
Those opposed, no. Motion is carried. Let's move on to item number 8, which this evening is the consent agenda. All matters listed under the consent agenda, which this evening are the regular minutes from the city council meeting held January 7th, the budget report, the monthly report of the police department, and the monthly report of the emergency services department. These are considered to be routine by the city council. They will be enacted by one motion. There will not be a separate discussion of these items. However, if discussion is desired, that item will be removed from the consent agenda and it will be considered separate. Is there any item that council wishes to be considered separate? Hearing none, the chair will entertain a motion to adopt the consent agenda.
So moved. Second?
Okay, we have a motion by member Nagel, a second by member Harmon to adopt the consent agenda. Is there any discussion? Roll call vote, please, Tanya.
Fox,
Yes.
Harmon,
Yes.
Nagel,
Yes.
Riddle,
Yes.
C,
Yes.
Whipple,
Yes.
Baker.
Yes, motion carried, consent agenda is adopted. There is no unfinished business, so let's move right into new business. First item under new business is to approve the January 21st, 2019 list of bills to be paid.
Motion to approve. Second?
Motion by member Nagel, and a second by member Harmon to approve the January 21st, 2019 list of bills to be paid. Any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Harmon,
Yes.
Nagel,
Yes.
Riddle,
Yes.
C,
Yes.
Whipple,
Yes.
Baker,
Yes.
Fox.
Yes.
Motion carried, resolution is adopted. Next item under new business, we have the lease renewal at the John W. Smith Park. Dan, do you want to touch on that at all?
Sure, this is a renewal with Paul Hewlett, or doing business as John Hewlett Trust. This is for approximately 12 acres of land over next to the A.J. Smith building. You can see the farmland behind there. So the amount is $735 annual, relatively small area. and we did increase it, so just last year, we did increase the lease rate. What we're asking is to renew the lease in its current form, and again, for that 12 acres, to the John Hewlett Trust. So if there's any questions, I can take those.
Very good, thank you, Dan. What's council's pleasure on this one?
Motion to approve that.
Second.
Okay, a motion by member Nagel and a second by member Riddle. This would be to approve the proposed lease of the city land to the John Hewlett Trust, authorize the mayor and city clerk to execute the lease agreement. Any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Nagel,
Yes.
Riddle. Yes. C,
Yes.
Wimple,
Yes.
Baker,
Yes.
Fox,
Yes.
Harmon. Yes.
Motion carried, resolution is adopted. Next up, we have the cemetery vehicle purchase. Once again, Dan, did you want to touch on that?
Thank you again, Mayor and Council. The current cemetery vehicle, if you see Mr. Ryder driving that, is a 1999 Sonoma pickup. So it has really reached the end of its useful life. It's obviously about 20 years old, and due to the extensive body rust and mechanical issues we're having on that, we did look at a replacement for that vehicle. We researched, and Mr. Ryder researched through the My Deal program as well as Oakland County purchasing program to get that lower cost for vehicles. I did find a vehicle, Chief Hills will serve well in that role, and so it is a 2018 GMC 1500, so a pickup. It is black, which actually probably will go well with funeral processions, etc., but a little bit different from what we currently have. You'll notice, again, it is the My Deal pricing, so for a vehicle that typically would retail at $37,935, we're able to obtain that for $28,094.43. So we do feel that is appropriate. We also feel that by going through the My Deal program, that does satisfy the city's bidding requirements. So our recommendation is to purchase that vehicle. If there's any questions, I can take them, or Mr. Ryder can answer any questions about the research he did.
Very good. Thank you, Dan. Questions, comments?
Quick question.
Yes, Ron?
Have we ever approached any of the local dealerships as far as what they can
We
possibly
yes.
provide for us?
Yes, we typically Suburban Chevrolet, just because most of our fleet is Chevy vehicles, we typically ask them, what they have available. I did that with this vehicle, and they've indicated they could not match the My Deal pricing. There are only a few dealers around the state that have access to that My Deal contract. They were not able to match that pricing. And I don't know, Dan, did you approach Suburban anymore?
We actually bid this back in July and got zero.
Yeah.
Here.
Dan, I see this is an 18 instead of a 19. Is this one that was on their lot or something?
Yes, it is a vehicle that is a run on from an 18.
Good.
And with that, typically each year the automakers will have a price increase, so, we save that, if you will, by purchasing the.
Anyone else? What's council's pleasure?
Move to adopt.
Second.
Motion by member Harmon, second by member Nagel. This would be to approve the purchase of a 2018 GMC 1500 Silverado. This comes from Todd Wenzel Buick GMC. The delivery price is $28,094.43. This would authorize the city manager to execute any related agreements and purchase orders noting that the My Deal program satisfies the city building requirements. Any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Riddle. Yes. C,
Yes.
Wimple.
Yes.
Baker,
Yes.
Fox,
Yes.
Harmon. Yes. Nagel.
Yes.
Motion carried, resolution is adopted. Let's continue on under new business. We have the bid for the repair and rehabilitation of well number 12. Dan?
Thank you again, council. This is, well number 12 is a well that we've known for some time. We had upcoming maintenance on for the pump and for cleaning. Unfortunately, the shaft broke before we actually were able to perform that maintenance. So with that, it's become a little bit more urgent to complete that maintenance and obviously rehab of the well. So with that, the utilities department did go out for bid on the the rehab and maintenance of well number 12. You see those two bids from Peerless Midwest and Northern Pump and Well. The low bid was from Peerless, who we've used in the past and been satisfied with, and that bid was for $34,846. And so with that, if you have questions, I'll probably defer them to Director Nepper, who is in the audience. So he can give you any more details or questions, or answer questions you may have.
Very good. Thanks, Dan. Questions or comments?
I got one.
Gary?
Todd, after you do this work, will this well be pretty much completely rebuilt?
It will be completely rebuilt, yes.
You know, everything that's gotta be fixed will be fixed there, and, is it updated and everything now?
Yes, it'll have all new shafts, couplers, bearings. The motor will be gone through to make sure that's good. The last time it was done was 2002, and it's got a little over 35,000 hours on it, so we should be able to get that again.
Second.
We have a motion by member Riddle, and second by member Harmon, and this would be to approve the quote from Peerless Midwest. The amount is $34,846, and this would be to clean, repair, and rehabilitate well number 12, and authorize the city manager to execute any required agreements or contracts. Any other questions or comments? Roll call vote, please. Tanya?
C.
Yes.
Whipple.
Yes.
Baker.
Yes.
Fox.
Yes.
Harmon.
Yes.
Nagel.
Yes.
Riddle. Yes.
Motion carried, resolution is adopted. The next item under new business, the bid award for the demolition of the bathhouse at the Tecumseh Park. Any comments you want to make on that, Dan?
Sure, thank you, Mayor and Council. As council is aware, the city is a recipient of a Department of Natural Resources grant to install new bathroom facilities at the Tecumseh Park. As part of that, we did take a look at, what options we had for that. This is certainly something that's been in need for some time. As actually during public comment, we heard we did go out and contact Creekoff Lenawee to look at various options for utilizing the existing building. And I guess to answer some of the questions that came up during public comment, we looked at two different options. One, to utilize the building simply as a open pavilion. So basically gut the interior, patch the floor, and open up the sidewalls in order to provide for a pavilion. The cost estimate for that was $130,000, just to have an open pavilion with that building. Pretty high compared to what we were hoping for, hoping maybe a lower cost option to keep the facility, at least utilize it as an open pavilion. We also did take a look at renovating the interior and providing 4 restrooms in the footprint of the existing building. The challenge there is that certainly if you've ever been inside the building, the restrooms are extremely large. And they're also connected to the former changing rooms and things when that was a full service, I guess, bathhouse, if you will. So you'd have to obviously cordon off sections of the building, create new doorways. Obviously, most of the fixtures, plumbing, mechanical, electrical systems need to be replaced. So the cost estimate for that, and so there was just to get the bathrooms up and running, and to reconfigure the floor plan of the building. Creekoff Lenawee provided an estimate of $235,000, is that correct?
That would be to do the complete building.
Okay.
Just to refurbish the restrooms was $125,000. In order to refurbish the entire building, to make the whole building functional as it was, that would be in excess of $236,000.
So, obviously those were high costs compared to, providing for a smaller restroom facility, prefabricated building. And, the challenge being, even after renovating the building, you still have a very large building to maintain and staff. And so, we do feel the most cost-effective method here is to demolish and replace with the smaller restroom buildings. Well, I don't think that's anybody's, preference. It would be nice to save the building. It's really not that cost effective to do so, in our opinion. And we've looked at this a number of different ways. Certainly, you know, that's something that the Recreation Advisory Board has weighed in on and looked at options. I think their feeling was to spend the extra funds, they had other priorities at other parks and recreation facilities in the city as opposed to just rehabbing this single building. So with that, we did proceed with the proposed demolition and obviously the installation of the new restroom facilities at the Tecumseh Park site. And that would be, the funding source, of course, majority would come from the DNR grant that would help fund the demolition. To ask the question, could we leave the building, do nothing, let it sit as is, and install the new restrooms elsewhere on the site? Yes, that is possible. We could certainly move the new restrooms. That would increase the cost of the water and sewer connections, because you'd have to run new water and sewer lines to the new location. But you know, that is possible. The challenge then becomes, what do you do with the existing building? Unfortunately, as council is aware, the city has incurred, you know, lost revenue in the neighborhood of, you know, about a third of our revenue since about a little over a decade ago. So we're operating now on revenues from, you know, back in 2006, 2007, similar revenue levels. So it is a challenge. I'm not sure, you know, where we find the funding going forward for the additional funds, but obviously council has the authority to take that from other departments or other projects to fund, you know, to provide the additional funding. With that, you know, we do still feel that the most cost-effective solution is to demo and build the new restrooms, and that is something we do have funding available through the DNR at this point in time. So I don't know, Director Lim obviously has tracked this through and been working with the Recreation Advisory Committee, so she can answer additional questions that council may have as well.
Thank you. Shelley, do you have any other comments or things that you'd like to add to this, what Dan has already said?
Dan, you pretty much summed it up. I feel like the most fiscally responsible option is to demo the building and install universally accessible bathrooms that will really serve the needs of the park and the park users the way it's being used today.
Thank you. Council, Ron?
The advisory board recommended that we tear down the existing building.
Yes, that is
and
correct,
put
Ron.
in the-
Anyone else? Hearing no further comment, the chair would entertain a motion to approve staff's recommendation.
So moved.
We have a motion by member Whipple. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second by member C. Once again, this will be to award the bid for the demolition of the bathhouse at Tecumseh Park to Swarovski Excavating and Paving Incorporated, and authorize the city manager to execute the required agreements or contracts. Let's open it up for any more discussion.
This bid is just for this demolition. This is not for the bathrooms to be put in here then.
That is
What are
correct.
what's the cost of the bathrooms to be put in?
Well, we have combined $119,000 set aside to complete the project, and we've costed out the project, and we should fall right in there. So this portion of the grant funding is $21,550 to demo the building. The rest of the funds will be used to purchase a prefabricated restroom building, install new concrete around it, install a bench on the outside, some minimal landscaping, and a little recycling center outside.
Recycling center?
Yes. Yep. Just a little three-tiered waste receptacle, so folks can separate their trash from their recyclables.
Do you not see as much activity at the pit as we used to have?
Yeah, I think folks recreate differently these days. We do have a lot of folks using the beach to swim. When I first started at the Recreation Department, we did have lifeguards staffing the beach, as you all may recall. And that continued for several years. Unfortunately, at the time, I don't think we had quite the numbers we had in, way back in its heyday. I kind of wish I was around to see that. But it cost us double the amount to appropriately staff the facility than the revenues that it was generated. So in 2008, as Dan mentioned, some decisions and budget cuts had to be made, and, that was one of the things that was cut, so. Folks do use the beach. We saw a market decline after there were no lifeguards, but when folks found out there was no charge to use the beach, then, a lot of folks come out and swim too, so. I think a lot of folks who may not be able to go elsewhere to recreate and cool off and take a dip, really do take advantage of it. And since that time, let's see, I think we closed that building actually in 2012. That was the last year that it was open over the summer for operations. We have had porta-johns installed at the pit. Certainly not an ideal option, however, it has suited the needs of the people. We've had them serviced 3 times a week throughout the season, and that has been very sufficient to meet the needs of the beachgoers, park users, folks using the pavilion, and recreating throughout the park. So I think the new building will also meet the needs of the people.
And how many restrooms are in each? Are they set up like 2 and 2 on each side, or?
There'll be 2 universally accessible restrooms. They're a single unit. So, there 2, just,
Yeah.
which is pretty much what we have out there right now, well, over the summer, yeah.
Anyone else? Ron?
What type of maintenance and security will we have?
That's a great question. Nothing is vandal-proof, and the new building certainly won't be either. However, it is designed to be as vandal-resistant as can be. The interior fixtures will all be stainless steel. The building itself is rated as bulletproof. It has an anti-graffiti finish on the inside and out, which I'll be curious to see myself. It's a prefabricated unit made out of concrete. It's a tornado shelter should we have severe weather in the area. So it's really a unit that's built to last. Comes with a 10-year manufacturer warranty.
Gary?
Kelly, with these new bathrooms, would they be, I'm sure they'll be lit up around them at night.
Yes.
Now, will there be any cameras, security cameras around them?
At this point, we don't have any camera security. However, that's something that we could certainly look into installing. And thank you for mentioning the lighting. The building will be outfitted with photosensitive lights on the outside, so that will also add for security.
Anyone else?
I think security cameras would be a good idea.
Any further comments, questions? Okay, once again, we have a motion by member Whipple, we have the second by member C, and that would be to award the bid for the demolition of the bathhouse at Tecumseh Park. This is to Slazarski Excavating and Paving Incorporated, and this would authorize the city manager to execute the required agreements or contracts. Tanya, roll call vote, please.
Wimple,
Yes.
Baker,
Yes.
Fox,
Yes.
Harmon,
Yes.
Noggle,
Yes.
Riddle,
Yes.
Seed.
Yes.
Motion carried, resolution is adopted. Our next item under new business is the first reading of ordinance 119. This is the deer feeding prohibition. Dan, you want to touch on that at all?
Thank you again, Mayor and Council. As we've discussed at a number of our meetings on how to better manage the white-tailed deer population that continues to grow within the city of Tecumseh. One of the things we found as a challenge was that some of our homeowners or residents are still feeding the deer in their backyards, which of course draws the deer into the city and of course exacerbates the existing problem we have with them damaging landscaping, as well as obviously causing a safety concern for potential deer vehicle accidents, as well as of course, the disease concerns with the Lyme disease. So with that, effective January 31st of this year, the state actually implemented a wildlife conservation order to prohibit feeding. To follow on with that, we felt a local ordinance would be helpful to our local law enforcement to help basically, if in the event that people are violating the feeding ban that has been proposed, or it will be implemented by the state, the local ordinance would give us authority to write a citation if we had to for those that are violating it under, and again, in this case, we'd write the violation under our local ordinance. So with that, we brought back language to you this evening of a proposed ordinance which would prohibit the feeding of deer within the city. And this was drafted with the assistance of our legal counsel, Mr. Lucas, obviously. Worked on it at our last meeting, in fact. So with that, we have the proposed language. If there's any questions from council, this is the first reading tonight. It will be brought back on the February 4th meeting for your final reading and adoption. So with that, if any questions, we can take those.
Very good. Thank you, Dan. Any questions or comments regarding this proposed ordinance?
Motion to approve it.
Second.
Motion by member Nago, second by member Harmon. This would approve the first reading of ordinance 119. This is by title only. This is an ordinance to amend the codified ordinances of the city of Tecumseh, Michigan, specifically chapter 10, animals, article 3, wildlife, division 1, feeding deer, sections 10.81-10.82, purpose and deer feeding prohibited. Any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Baker,
Yes.
Fox,
Yes.
Harmon,
Yes.
Noggle,
Yes.
Riddle,
Yes.
C,
Yes.
Winfle.
Yes.
Motion carried. Next up, we have a few appointments to make. The Board of Review reappointment of Barb Hefner. This is for a 3-year term expiring in January 2022.
Move for the appointment.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by member Wemple, a second by member Harmon. This would be the reappointment of Barb Hefner to the Board of Review for a 3-year term expiring January 2022. Any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Fox,
Yes.
Harmon,
Yes.
Noggle,
Yes.
Riddle,
Yes.
C,
Yes.
Winfle,
Yes.
Baker.
Yes, motion carries, the resolution is adopted. The last appointment we have is the reappointment of Chad Patel. This is a 2-year term. This is also for the Board of Review. The term would expire January 2021.
Move to appoint.
Second.
Motion by member Fox, second by member Nagel. This is to reappoint Chad Cattell for a 2-year term expiring January 2021 to the Board of Review. Any discussion? One more roll call vote, please.
Harmon,
Yes.
Noggle,
Yes.
Riddle,
Yes.
C,
Yes.
Winfle,
Yes.
Baker,
Yes.
Fox.
Yes.
Motion carried, resolution is adopted. We are now on item number 11, public comment. This is regarding items that were not on this evening's agenda. If there's anyone in the audience that would like to address council regarding items that were not on the agenda, this is your opportunity. Okay, hearing none, does council have anything? Okay, once again, our next meeting is 2 weeks from this evening, February 4th. Dan?
Yes, just a few things. February 4th, of course, I've requested that we conduct my annual review following that meeting. So that would be in a closed session, but I can have those, certainly will have the suggested materials for you. You can adapt those however you see fit. And then also, February 18th would be, we're starting our budget season. So I'm requesting that we hold a study session before the regular meeting at 6:30 PM on the 18th, so it's an hour early. This would just be a preview of where we stand, projected revenues, as well as a summary of the requested budgets submitted by the department heads. So you have an idea of where we stand, both in terms of what we project for revenue in our next fiscal year, but also what we would expect in terms of expenditures. And then I also hand out this evening the balance of the budget adoption process, one of those being on March 11th, which is our off Monday. I would request again, budget study session at 6:30 PM. This is where the department heads will come in present their numbers and also be available for questions that council may have specific to the requested budget. So that again will be on the 11th, which is not one of our regular meeting days. So if you could put that on your calendar, it'd be greatly appreciated.
Okay.
That's it for me.
Thank you, Dan.
So-
Once again, does council have anything? Okay, adjournment is in order.
So move. Second.
Motion by member Harmon, second by member Grillo to adjourn this meeting. Those in favor of the motion, yes?
Yes.
Opposed, no.